welcome to Just the Facts, episode number 5. And it's a great one today on insights for certified pre-owned success. We have a lot of people that registered, a lot of people on today. So welcome, and Facebook Live audience, welcome as well. Thanks for tuning in to Just the Facts. We really appreciate it. So as we kick things off, Bob, you and I always have a discussion. And so we like these to be insights, right? Insights into the industry. This is not a Carfax commercial. This is just insights into our perspective, the consumer's perspective, the dealer's perspective, and then also our expert's perspective. And we have a great one today, don't we?
Yes,
Good.
we do.
Good, and we'll introduce who that is in just a few minutes. So, hey, Bob, guess what?
Sir?
I bought a pre-owned vehicle. I got into that system during COVID, and it was about 3 weeks ago. About 5-6 weeks ago, I started the process. I was interested in another Jeep, right? So we bought a brand new one last year. And so we had the need for another one, if you could believe that or not. Either way, you can believe it. But we did. We were interested in a pre-owned Jeep, and boy, I had an experience because I didn't tell anybody I was from Carfax. I wanted to go through the entire process, and I must say it was interesting, and it brought up some anxiety. It brought up some interesting level of concerns that I had going into looking for a pre-owned Jeep. And I went back from a for sale by owner and looking, not on Craigslist, but, like I was looking around and saw some ads, if you can believe that or not. There's still ads out there. You can find them. And went through that process, went to an independent dealer and looking for that Jeep, and also went all the way up to like the biggest franchise dealer in America, in the world. And so kind of the whole spectrum, because I wanted to just experience it, right? So I had concerns, but what I want to know from you, because you can chime in here, and it kind of has to do with what we're talking about today, is customer concerns. I'm not going to share with you what my number one concern ended up being yet. That's a teaser. But I want to know from your perspective, what are consumers today most concerned about when they're shopping for those pre-owned vehicles, especially online, because a lot of people are starting that process. And by the way, you know how we talk about 14 hours that the average customer spends online? That was probably me. I spent a lot of time online. So there you have it. What are some of those concerns other consumers have? And then I'll reveal what mine was.
Well, it's funny. You forget that because, of course, we've been in the industry a long time. We currently work for Carfax. Everyone on this call is pretty much in the industry, and we forget what it's like to be a consumer, right? We're typically not afraid of a car. We got all the tools and credentials to find out until you're ready to buy one. And the minute you're ready to spend your own money, just like a consumer, all those thoughts come back to mind, right? However, with that being said, there are two main concerns, and I've been refreshed on this, especially during COVID, right? We always want to stay on our game. Believe it or not, even though we work for the company that represents it, history in the car's history is by far number one. And then getting a fair deal, right? Getting a fair deal is always high on the record. We know that price is subject to the value of the car or subject to how much a person wants. So price is always there. It's never number one though. Number one, according to the stuff I've been reading, and this sounds like a plug, so thanks for this, DJ. You're going to get us in trouble. is the unknown, right? It's always the unknown. What were your two?
So I'm going to give you the number one just right out of the gate, because it was interesting as I got into the process and I was concerned about, the history of the Jeep. And then I saw the Carfax report and I saw, the final three that we really landed on that we wanted to go look at and test drive. There was enough information on the Carfax report to give me, some confidence. But then the underlying real concern and what gave me the most anxiety wasn't necessarily what happened in the past to the vehicle. It was what that dealer did in the present to get that vehicle ready for me. And so I started really diving into that and asking.
Are you saying the dealer matters?
It does. It was huge because I'm looking at it. I see the past and I look at great Carfax report, fantastic. But then I really was concerned and I asked all three people, it's like, so what type of inspection process do you guys have? Like, what did you go through on this vehicle? Because it looks great, but then on one particular one, they didn't have it ready for me to view, but then the salesperson brought me out into the service bay.
Yeah.
And I looked underneath it and there was all kinds of rust. And this was probably the best Carfax report that was there. And I'm like, well, wait a second. So we always say, do a further inspection on the vehicle.
Yeah.
And so usually you're not going to go underneath the car, right? But I just happened to see it and turned around and walked away. And so there was still mud that was caked on it, right? So someone went four-wheeling like the day before. So it was interesting. It was kind of odd. But what really made me concerned most was really, what did that dealer do to look at the past to really see what was going on with the present, right? And if there's anything that needed to be fixed, but then also, did they set that vehicle up for me in the future? I don't want it to break down. It's pre-owned. And so that became my major concern. And it kind of just changed my thought process, because I train, I go out there and talk to dealers, and it's always been, make sure accidents, number one concern, right? Service and maintenance, number two. But I've never really added in there that what the dealer really does to promote that vehicle. And I think talking about certified pre-owned makes a lot of sense today, because really having someone back that vehicle, take a look at what's happened in the past using Carfax to really evaluate how to get that vehicle in line so it's safe and reliable for that next customer.
That's absolutely true. And of course, we are partner with all kinds of dealers, be it independents, be it franchise dealers, be it, but without question, a franchise dealer does have a distinct advantage with a manufacturer certified, right? Independents have their own version of a certified car, but the true certified pre-owned from a manufacturer is by franchise only. And that is the top topic today. So that was a great segue, D. And we did not rehearse that for those of you that—
No, because I want to tell you the story fresh, right? And, my own experience, what concerns are. But I think it's time to bring our guest in. So why don't you introduce who it is? And he can come in.
When we were asked to do a session on certified pre-owned, certainly during the last year of trying times, certified has definitely helped the dealers get through it. So we put our collective minds together, and we're like, we got to get someone with impact, right? We got to get someone. Well, our guest today is none other than Ron Cooney from Toyota Certified Pre-Owned, right? Toyota being the biggest on the CPO front. We might as well get the best director out there. Now, Ron comes to us with quite a historic past himself. He got in the car business in the 80s, working on the back of the house, detailing the service side of the business. But he's been with Toyota for over 20 years. 10 years Toyota, 10 years Lexus at the field offices in New York. And in 2017, he joined Toyota at a headquarters position, being the director of certified pre-owned. So if there's someone to ask questions about pre-owned, he's the guy to ask. So Ron, welcome, sir.
Greetings. Hello there. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, DJ. DJ, before we get going, again, I didn't know your little story in the opening there. So I have a question for you. How many dealerships did you visit before you purchased? Actually, let me rephrase it. How many vehicles did you visit before you purchased? Because we always say dealership visits, but really you look for cars, you find cars, and then you go visit those cars. So how many cars did you visit before you purchased?
So virtually hundreds, right? So look at hundreds virtually, and lots of different dealerships, and actually in multi-states as well. But physically on the test drive, we narrowed it down to 3.
So you did a test drive at 3 dealerships. Did you go to even more dealerships just to kind of drive through? Oh, there it is, and then keep driving, or?
Nope. We landed on just the 3. We knew,
okay, cool.
We did our research enough and called, make sure it was available, set an appointment, did all that kind of stuff. Because I wanted to know the process. But
I asked that. That's a great answer. I asked that because we do a lot of our marketing is based on just that alone. Like, we spend a lot of time following click data and click performance and where are people shopping online and building predictive models to kind of match their behavior with our cars. But where are they actually physically shopping, and how long is that journey? And we've learned it's not 1.4 dealerships the average consumer visits. It's closer to 5 when they're looking for cars. And it takes about 60 days from the time they visit their first one to their last one. So what happens in between that actually does make the sale? So we spend a lot of time on that. So I just thought that was interesting, not knowing your opening there. So sorry to delay the opening, Bob. Back
Oh,
to you.
no, you're not delaying anything. We're always live with this stuff. I do have a question, though, that's been most asked. And I used to get this a lot at my AutoNation days from the dealers and so forth. And because we were certainly a big proponent of certified pre-owned. And to this day, I still am. I do believe it's the best used car purchase a customer can make if they're going to go with used. But I do have a challenge question for you. You guys are a high volume CPO franchise. That's one of the main reasons we wanted to have you on here. Does that ever get pushed into new? You know, I just get asked this question a lot. So I'm just gonna put it right out there because I know a lot of dealers tell us that's a concern that, you know, if they pump their CPO, it's going to take away from the new car sales. You must hear that. Do you hear that?
Yeah. It's very normal to kind of hear that. So, and some of the things I always say, does the department store get upset when they're not selling suits and the people are selling too many sport coats? Are we stealing business? You know, or do we market to all people that want to buy clothing and then we sell them anything once they get here? So that's kind of our approach. But yeah, we do hear that from time to time. But as I mentioned, we do a lot of analysis on the marketing and media side and have learned, because the used car industry is about 40 million units a year. And that includes customer to customer, OEMs, independents, and any other transaction in between. So imagine the amount of people that are actually online, as DJ mentioned, 14 hours or so shopping for a vehicle. As where the new vehicle side is about 14 million a year, not including fleet, because there's not a used car fleet. So we're talking retail here. So at any given time, there's almost 3 times as many people online shopping for a used car than there are for new. So wouldn't you want to market to those people and get them to your dealership?
Yeah,
Right. So that's number one. And I love asking dealers this all the time. So how often when a customer comes in on a new car, do you put them in a used car? But that's kind of a loaded question, right? So let's look at it this way. The average customer, let's say it buys a certified pre-owned Toyota, is buying a 3 to 4 year old used Toyota. Now they may have financed it for 5 years. So that car is now 8 or maybe 9 years old. Yeah. And they want to come in and they want to buy the brand new Camry, right? They have the money, the down payment, they can afford it, the whole 9 yards. They want the brand new Camry. So it's the dealer's going to decide, no, we're going to switch them into a 3 or 4 or 5 year old car. So it just doesn't make sense. So we've learned a lot over the last few months and the last couple of years that marketing to used car customer draws a lot of used car customers, and you sell a lot of used cars. And the other point of that too is, and one of the things that's interesting is we have an integrated lead management system where we can track leads. I'm sure everybody has that. And we have about a 12% average dealer close rate on leads, especially on Toyota certified used vehicle leads. However, on those Toyota certified used vehicle leads, we also have a 7% new car close ratio. So of the leads that sell, we sell a lot of new Toyotas to customers that came in on the certified pre-owned. You think about it. So that draws a lot of traffic. We actually do the opposite. We steal a lot of certified sales for customers to buy new, but we're proud of that.
Well, you know, that brings us to a question we've been asked in one of the requests was to ask you this question. So I'm going to ask it to you. We hear a lot about turn rate, right? And the velocity and so forth. So what's your thoughts on how CPO can affect turn rate and the velocity? And is it a pro or con, or what's going on with that?
Well, it's another one, in my opinion, another one of those questions that even if you say, I'm not a fan of velocity, yes, you are. You absolutely are. If you say you have a 90-day aging policy and it takes a car 10 days to get through the shop and you sell, guess what? That's velocity. Right. So we tend to manage our business that way, right? So what we try to do, so I'm a big fan of velocity, but in many different terms. So it kind of means something new to everybody. I think it's important to make sure you obviously turn your inventory so it doesn't get old, right? So you want the salespeople to always look at your inventory as it being fresh. It starts, you know where the keys are, there's no flat tires, and the customer, it's always ready, to GJ's point about it's ready to be viewed by a consumer. But I also look at velocity as recon. There's money to be made at the dealership when we put these cars through recon, right? There's a lot of labor hours and parts profit that's generated. There's F&I that's generated. There is dock fees. Right. So there's a whole bunch that goes into it. And even there's another thing that it seems like we talked about this about 10 years ago, but not so much anymore, reviews. So when you can pile up those customer reviews and say, wow, I've had a great experience at this dealership, the more cars you sell, the more reviews you get, the more relevant you become. So your dealership shows up more. So I like velocity in terms of everything. Let's move the cars quick. Let's get them through recon quick. Let's get them frontline ready quick. Let's sell them quick. So we gather all this stuff, and velocity is the entire enterprise of the dealership, if you will, not just how fast can we turn a particular car for the sake of turning it.
One last question that I had I wanted to ask you was, is there particular models or year models that work well as CPO? You know, some dealers like to stock those 1-year-olds that they grab from fleets, but isn't the optimal in that 2 to 3 year? Is that still the case for Toyota?
Absolutely. We look at this all the time, especially when we start to hear, wow, we sold a lot of CPO or TCUV Corollas this month. Wow, is there a chance we had some bleed over? But yeah, our sweet spot are 80% of our vehicles are in that 2.5 to 4 year old range. So with the majority being 3 to 4 year old. So by far the most. As you start getting newer, current model year 1 year old, it's less than 6% of our sales. And then obviously, as you get much older, the inventory tends to dwindle down a little bit and the numbers go down. So, but the sweet spot is that 3, 4 year old car. Absolutely.
Yeah. And you know, it's funny because I know sometimes it seems easier to go out and buy those 1-year-old fleets and so forth. But man, when you look at like lease returns, for example, right, that's got to be the sweet spot. Most of those cars fall right into the range you just said. Right? They have 12,000 miles a year or less. The dealer's typically taking care of that. What's your take on lease returns?
Again, great point. It's especially from the Toyota side, we have a great platform that we can market all the lease returns to the dealers, keep them in the family, if you will. So if there's an area, let's say the Northeast, that leases a lot of cars but can't consume all of them, well, we can keep those cars in the ecosystem where they're sold in areas where there's not as much lease return activity. So those are by far the best avenues for our inventory. And you can imagine with selling the amount of new cars that we do, the amount of cars that we lease, it's prime for the certified, the certified part of our business for sure.
You know, that makes perfect sense, especially with inventory being hard to obtain. That's the number one challenge we hear from dealers today, is that being able to obtain quality inventory. Well, that's something they can control, right? They're the first destination for that lease return. Keeping on to those seems to have made sense. And that's certainly what we promote, but it's great hearing it from someone like yourself.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring up the trade-ins and those types of things, and it's hard to acquire inventory. And that's where velocity, in my opinion, comes in again sometimes too. If we don't have a strong grip on all of these different processes that determine from the time I own a vehicle, not to the time it goes in the shop, or not from the time it comes out of the shop, to the time I own it, how fast am I selling it? You could miss some opportunities to trade on new cars, because you got to take in some more cars maybe you don't necessarily want and on trade until you get to the pieces you really do want. Yeah. So having a really good turn or velocity strategy helps you turn everything really quick so that you sell the cars that are less desirable, not just the ones that are more desirable.
That makes a lot of sense. That's why we wanted to ask you. We figured you'd have some insights into that.
Sure.
We certainly appreciate you sharing them.
One of the things, Ron, that I bring up on every one of these episodes is I push back a little bit and I challenge a little bit, because from a dealer perspective, changing a process, adding a process, doing something different, it always takes more time and it usually costs more money. So my question here is, how advantageous is it for a dealer to really take on a certified pre-owned program when it is going to take a little bit more time and cost them a little bit more money?
Well, it's like anything, and we preach this a lot and we talk about this a lot. We hope it never comes across to the dealer body that you should just be doing certified pre-owned, Toyota certified. That's it, 100%. No, we ask dealers to add it to their portfolio. The certified pre-owned business, the entire industry is 2.8 million vehicles sold every year, in that 40 million ecosystem of used cars. It's only 7%. It is a very small part of the total amount of used vehicles transacted every year. It's a small percent, but it could be a large percent of a franchise dealer's business, right? So we just simply ask dealers to add it to their business or lineup if they're currently not doing it. But forgive me, but it's kind of like best practices, DJ, when you say, we want you to do something new that you haven't done before. The first thing, oh my God, it's going to cost me money. It's going to cost me training. But, and doing TCUV or certified pre-owned is kind of like a best practice, right? When really it's more of a culture and philosophy issue than it is an ability issue, right? So a lot of times I hear, well, it doesn't really fit here. It's not really a good market for it here. I can make more money doing other things here. When really it is, we're just asking you to add it to your business because there is a segment of customers that are looking for that 3 or 4 year old car at a OEM franchise dealership, and they want some assurances that come along with it. They want that, excuse me, that ownership experience just like new, which a lot of our dealers already offer, but in the customer's mind, if you don't have certified, you don't offer it. So you need them to come to your dealership so you can explain to them all the great things that you do to give that peace of mind, where having that certified tag at the beginning can actually draw that traffic in. And I have a great analogy when it comes to best practices. It's kind of like, it's like anything else. So I had a friend one time, it sends me a bunch of photos and takes horrible photos with his phone. He's always sending me photos with his phone. So one time when I saw him, I said, give me your phone. So I said, you see this little button here? It's called portrait mode. So I took a couple of pictures and he's like, oh my God, I can't believe it. So I just shared a best practice. It was very, very simple. Now, does he have the ability to implement that best practice? Now I get pictures of his martinis and his fire pit like every other day with some fancy feature on it. I mean, it's nonstop. It's annoying. I created a monster. But it's very different if you were to say, all right, let's change the way you do your used car business. And I believe all dealers have the ability to do it, right? It's just making some tweaks and a little bit of a commitment. But it's not an overall overwhelming change to your operation. You're adding extra to bring in more customers.
We want to thank you so much for joining us on episode 5 of Just the Facts. Ron, we also want to thank you for being on with us as our guest sponsor today.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.
Episode 6 next month of Just the Facts. We're not going to tell you what that's going to be about quite yet, but be looking on Facebook and in your email for that next episode coming soon. Did I say March? I actually meant February. I'm a month ahead. So February, that's going to happen on the 3rd. So we will send you correspondence of what that's going to be about very soon. So if you have to log off, thanks again for tuning in today.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, DJ. Appreciate it.
Guys,
everybody.
take care,
Stay
everyone.
safe, everybody.